My name is Mike Shaft. That's not my real name, but that's my work name. I was born in the Caribbean, in Grenada. I'm actually from Carriacou. That's where the family's from. We came over here in '68. That was me, my brother, and my mum. My father had come over about 2 or 3 years after I was born. So I was born in '55, so '58, '59, I think he came over. And he came over to make his fortune. The streets were paved with gold. We're still looking for that. Eventually saved up enough to bring us over. And he'd worked a lot in London. When the company he worked for in London were opening offices in Manchester, he was able to get the money together to pay down on a house and bring us over. And that was my introduction to the UK. Had a great life in Grenada. I was very fortunate that our family there were fairly well-to-do. My grandfather had a store. Everybody on the island knew us. And it was great. It was a great life. The school is from here to 20 yards away, the school. So I'd fall out of bed and go to school. That was the junior school. I passed the test to go to GBSS in Grenada. And I was there for just under 2 years, I think, before we left to come over here. Loved GBSS, loved Grenada, loved Carriacou. Well, came to the UK and it was a totally different life. The first thing I noticed was this. In the Caribbean, and in GBSS in particular, which is GBSS, by the way, is Grenada Boys Secondary School. Tough to get into, and the discipline there was unbelievable. Unbelievable. They put up with nothing. You towed the line or you were out. Came over here, and to put it nicely, it was a bit different. The discipline was very lacking, very disappointed in that. So that's one of the first things I noticed. I loved school. We had some great teachers. We had some others as well who weren't so good. Suffered a bit of racism, but it made me who I am. I rose up above it. I've suffered other racism. I remember I wanted to go to the RAF. I wanted to join the RAF. That's the first job I wanted to do. Did all the tests in Manchester, passed those. Went to the regional centre, which was in Stafford. Did all the tests there, passed all those. And in the final interview, the guy said, we don't think you'll fit into the services. I said, okay. And I found out some years later from a guy who was a high up in the RAF that we didn't let black people in those days. You know, they were quite blatant about it, so be it. I didn't let it stop me doing what I wanted to do. The only other thing I wanted to do was to become a DJ. And I did that around Manchester. Played music in nightclubs for years and years and years, became quite good at it, drew a nice audience every night. Came across some racism there, worked at a club called Rafters, absolutely chocker Friday and Saturday night. Arrived there one Saturday and all the people are outside, all these black people are outside. And I went over and said, what's going on? They're not letting us in tonight. So I went and I said to the manager, what's going on? He says, it's gotten a bit too black, you know. So I said, if they're not coming in, I'm not working here. So I just went back to my car and went home. Started a club somewhere else and they all came there. So it was a great time for me, a great opportunity to express myself. I worked for the post office. When I first left school and we didn't get into the RAF, I took up a job as a telegram delivery guy. So we'd be riding on bicycles or little mopeds up and down around Manchester delivering telegrams. At the end of that, they got to the age where they said, that's been a junior postman, now you move on to being a postman. I said, I've got no interest in being a postman. And they said, well, would you consider trying out for the counter? So I passed the test for the counter and worked on the counter for many, many years. Had some fun with that. You know, it was a great experience, met lots of people, all different kinds of people. Worked in some tough areas, worked in Salford, which was from the minute you open in the morning to when you close at 5:30 or whatever it is, chocker, just chocker. You worked in other places that were less busy. I remember working in Didsbury, and that was a lovely setup and nice people. And one day, I opened up the newspaper and it said, Andy Peebles goes to Radio 1. Andy Peebles was working at Piccadilly Radio. Within 45 minutes, I'd gone down to Piccadilly Radio to the reception, asked to see the boss, he wasn't there. I spoke to his assistant, told the lady, look, I'm the only person to take over from Andy Peebles. I got massive following in the clubs, this is the music that you're playing on this show. In the end, she said, look, send in a tape. I says, I've sent in tapes before. He doesn't listen to them. She says, I'll make you a deal. Send a tape to me. I'll make sure he listens. I says, if he listens to this tape, I'll get the job. Sent the tape in, and I sent one to Radio 1, who was starting off a show in Manchester, coming just from here in Moss Side, on the edge of Moss Side and Hugh, and another one to Radio Merseyside. Got a reply 2 days later from Radio Merseyside saying we're not interested. Next day I got 2 replies, one from Radio 1 saying, phone my secretary for an appointment, one from Piccadilly, phone my secretary for an appointment. Went to appointments at both, got a job with Radio 1. I'm working at the post office in Wythenshawe, and the phone rings on the Thursday before the show's supposed to start on the Saturday. And it's the producer. He says, are you sitting down? I says, it's not happening, is it? He says, no, it's not. I says, is it anything to do with me? He says, it's nothing to do with you. I says, okay, I understand, that's fine. And the problem was that in those days, which is a long time ago, radios 1 and 2 used to have their programs during the day, and in the evening they would join up. And the BBC decided that they're going to split off radios 1 and 2 in the evening, so they each would have a 24-hour schedule. Andy Peebles had left Piccadilly to go and work on Radio 1 in this new segment between 7 and 10, I think it was, on a Saturday night. And this new disco show, Discovating it was called, was going to run from 10 till 12. And it never came off for me. I put the phone down to the producer. Within 10 minutes, Piccadilly Radio phoned and said, I hear you've got a job. I said, what job's that? He says, I know what job it is. He says, we're still interested. Why don't you come in and see me tomorrow? I said, okay. That was a Friday night. I got to the station at about 5 o'clock. He came out to meet me. We're walking past the drinks machine. I knew where it was. He says, do you want a drink? I says, I'll have a hot chocolate. Walking into his office, and he says, when do you want to start? This Sunday, okay? That Sunday I did my first show, and it's what I've been doing ever since then. You know, different places, different radio stations, but doing pretty much the same thing. I'm one of these odd people. I have a saying. People say, how are you? I say, I'm always happy, just never satisfied. And it's true. It's me. I love doing what I do. People say, you know, you must be coming up to retirement soon. I say, retiring from what? I work on the radio. I go in, interview people, play some of my favorite music, and then they send me a check. What want to retire for? I have no intentions of retiring. I'm not working in a coal mine somewhere, you know, not wanting to go to work every day. I can't wait to get up at 4:30 on a Sunday morning to go and do what I do. The other things that I do, last night, for instance, the Sheffield Sharks Basketball Club in Sheffield, I commentate all their games. Last night was the end of season presentation. I hosted that. Great evening. What do I want to retire from that for? I'm sure at some point in time, somebody will come and say, you're a bit old for this now, you know, and so be it. But I ain't retiring. You know, I'm keeping going. I love basketball. I do basketball for Sheffield. I do basketball for Cheshire. I do netball for Manchester. And I host conferences and that kind of stuff. And nobody's getting rich, but the bills are being paid.
Okay, let me ask you about what interactions you've had with people or different groups or institutions that are giving you confidence and have made you get involved in making more life-challenging opportunities for more people in the UK.
Well, that's complicated for me. When I got the job on the radio, there hadn't been a person like me on radio in Manchester before that, a black person, let's put it in its words. And because I'd been through the nightclubs, to put it mildly, everybody of a certain age in Manchester knew me, listened to me, loved the music that I played. And that's what it was all about for me. And I could play a song on one night in a nightclub. Within 3 weeks, everybody's talking about it, everybody's dancing to it. Going to the radio was just an extension of that. I then did other shows where we did interviews. I interviewed some great people, not just black people, white people as well, Chinese, Asian. And that's what I do now. I do the Sunday breakfast program, as I told you, and I speak to everybody. And we have some wonderful guests, and then we have some guests who weren't that good, but we made the best of what we had. People who've impressed me over the years, there have been loads of them. absolutely loads of them. And whether or not people listening out there listen to what I say and act on it, I'm a Christian, I'm a strong Christian, I have strong beliefs. I try to live my life right. And by doing that, I'm hoping I'm demonstrating to people that you can live your life right. Gus John is a legend from this area. He was born in Grenada. Didn't get into GB, no, I'm only joking. He went to a different college in Grenada, Presentation College. And he did a speech for us recently at the Windrush event that we had. And he's just wonderful, magnificent. And I remember after the riots in Manchester, there was an inquiry. And it was decided that nobody would go to the inquiry because it was going to be stitched up. And I arrived there to go to the inquiry. And they were saying, don't go, Mike, come on, stay. I said, I want to hear what's said. And I went to the inquiry. And whether or not people like me or dislike me, didn't bother me a bit. I have never had a problem with confidence. If I believe in something and I do it, it'll get 100% of my time. And because I'm on the radio and in the public air, I have to know what's going on all over the world, all the time. My wife can't believe how much news I look at. I could sit there for hours looking at a story because I have to see it develop. Because on Sunday, I may need to talk about it. I may have a guest who's coming in to talk about it. So I don't know whether people listen to what I say, but I say it in the right way, and hopefully it's having an influence.
Do you think some of that is because of the background, obviously, that you had in your early beginnings, but maybe also community support? You mentioned Gus John. Anybody else in the community that you felt linking with them helped you progress?
Well, I remember very well Louise Dakakodia. I don't know if you know the name, absolute legend in this area. I used to be invited to a lot of government type things because I was in the public eye. Lynbert Spencer, who is no longer in this area, but was in Manchester back in the day, was on all the government bodies for this, on tech trading councils, tech councils, and I'd get invited to that kind of thing. Some of it worked out, others, were closed down within weeks or months or whatever. Not because of me, but because the funding ran out or whatever. So it's, again, I come back to, I can only live my life the way I live my life. My kids know what I expect of them. I've told them if they ever come to me and say I've committed a crime, I say the next stop is the police station. I will take you there and we'll stand together and you'll admit to what you've done. And they know what I expect of them. And that's how I was brought up. And again, I was brought up in the Caribbean. You didn't step out of line to my grandfather. You didn't answer back. Are you kidding? I never knew my father for the first 12, 13 years of my life because he left very soon after. I'm the first, my brother was the second, both born in the Caribbean. And then he came over here. So we were brought up by my grandfather and grandmother who had an extended family. I don't know how many brothers, aunties and uncles I've got. And the youngest of their family is just a bit older than me. So, we just came along as the next batch and it was a great life. As I say, I've worked with different groups and different people. I was involved with a NEAR Center for a while, which, these things come and go in the black community. There is very little stuff that comes and stays for decades or anything like that. And it's very sad. I don't know whose fault it is. Even nightclubs where people gather, it works for a year and then it disappears for whatever reason. On the site just here, the Nile Club was there and the Reno, legend in their days. People who remember them. And they were meeting places and everybody who was anybody was there. But they come and they go. As for organizations, other than the ones I mentioned, there's very little else I can mention. Once I got onto the radio, I became part of that establishment, and I'd get invited to open fates here, there, and everywhere, and I was happy to go and do it and spend an hour or whatever. And it was great fun. But I go back to the fact that everybody in Manchester, I couldn't walk through Manchester without somebody, Mike Shaft, how you doing? Had a couple of great ones. I'm on holiday in Turkey recently. My daughter, her partner, and I walk into a Chinese restaurant just talking, and this guy says, "You Mike Shaft?" And my voice is very distinctive around here. So everybody knew me, everybody knew what I stood for. If they thought they could use me in any way, they'd call me in and ask for advice. I still get invited to talk to a lot of school kids because of what I've done. And I just tell them, it ain't easy out there, but if you want an easy life, find a job that you love doing and you'll never work a day in your life. If you, when the clock goes off, you think, great, can't wait to get into work today. You're not working. What would I like the government to do? If only it was the only problem there was. There are enough problems at the moment, and I don't know how it's ever going to be resolved. I think for the first time in my life, I'm concerned for the future. I ask people that question, nearly every interview I do on the radio, I say, are you concerned for the future? Are you confident for the future? And most people are confident, and I used to be confident. I'm very concerned for the future now. And it starts off not in this country. For me, it starts off with Trump. Because what has happened in the States with him coming to power is that racists and xenophobes and the rest of them now feel free to do and say stuff that they were never allowed to do in the past. And that is shocking, because what's happening now is that standards are dropping fast. You look at what the newspapers write now, and the integrity has gone out of the media at the moment. The internet, I have to say, is a driving factor for the problems, because every Tom, Dick, or Harry now thinks they've got a voice. Even people who haven't got anything to say are on there saying stuff. So to me, I don't know how it's going to change. Then along comes Windrush, along comes a government who, for whatever reason, and I don't know what the reason is, decided that they wanted to send black people back, basically, because that's what it was. It didn't matter where you came from. If you were black, you were going back. I remember many years ago, they said if you weren't born here, you had to register and get your papers. I said to my wife, on the first day it asked for it, I'm going to get my papers, because I know that in the future, people without papers, they're going to want to send them home. I got my registration papers. It's in a box at home. And then I wasn't surprised when they then decided that it's black people's fault that everything is going on. We haven't got any money. It's black people's fault. Send them home. It's just nonsense. It's utter and absolute nonsense. And I don't know how it's going to change. A change of government ain't necessarily going to mean it's going to change, because it is now so ingrained, the racism. And I mentioned before, when I first came over here, I had some racial problems at school. It was nothing major, people calling me names. Didn't bother me. I knew what I stood for. I knew what I believed in. I knew what my parents and my grandparents stood for. So nothing they could say was going to hurt me. But I think it's worse now. I think we as a people have another problem in that if somebody gets sacked from a job, a black person gets sacked from a job, it's because I'm black. Could it have been because you were no bloody good at the job you were supposed to do? And those people are giving us a bad name. If you can't do the job, don't take the job. If you get the job and you think, yeah, I can do this, and then you then find out I can't do it, go and ask the boss for some training. Tell him, look, this is too much for me. Can you help? And they'll probably help. But if there's no help and they say, we'll have to let you go, you can't turn around and say it's because I'm black. You have to say it's because I wasn't good at the job. And we have to learn that as a people, and we have to be better than everybody else at the jobs, so that when the boss comes and says, things are difficult and we're going to have to cut back, he's not looking to cut you back, because he knows you're the best in the office, and he's going to look at other people, some black, some white, some whatever, and they may have to go. You have to make yourself better than everybody else in this, and I think the sooner we learn that, the better for us. Having said all of that, I'm still concerned for the future, because politics is in a very bad way. And I know what politics was like in the 1930s in Europe, and we saw where that led to. The extreme right is getting stronger and stronger and stronger at the moment, and I don't know how you slow them down, every country. Spain just had their election recently. Extreme right are now in the Spanish parliament. They're not big, but they're in the Spanish parliament. You've got extremists in some of the eastern countries, and I don't know how we stop that. And to me, we need people, politicians of stature. We ain't got no politicians of stature at the moment. There's one or two, I'll tell you some names in a minute, but the rest of them are honestly an embarrassment. And some of these people stand up and lie. And now where I come from, you don't lie. You just don't. And yet Trump can stand there. In fact, there was a survey recently. They have a running count of the lies that Trump has told. And this week, when this is being recorded, he told his 10,000th lie. And they're all written down. And what I don't understand about him is, and I can only think he must have a mental problem, I could lie to you, but there's a camera there. So it's recording what I'm saying. I could lie to you when we're walking out and nobody would know. He lies on the camera and then says, no, I never said that. Well, I'm afraid we got the evidence. So if people begin to think they can walk on water, they can tell any lie they want, if they get caught, they say, I misspoke and that sort of stuff. But these things are having effects on people's lives. And I think about all these Mexican babies being ripped from their mothers at the border. And some of them, they don't even know what happened to them. The parents will never be reunited with the kids because they don't know whose kid is this. I'm concerned for the future. I remember doing a talk in Longsight quite a few years ago. And at the end of it, somebody stood up and says, why don't you go into politics? And I said, I've got too much integrity. And there was some booing and hissing from the crowd. And I said, I've been booed and hissed at by better people than you, so I'm not concerned. It needs better quality politicians. There are a few individuals who seem to be on the right track. The better older ones are either dying off or going out of business or going out of their minds. But I don't know honestly, and I don't want to be depressive because I'm not. But how we change the whole thinking, not just in Manchester, not just in the UK, but this is worldwide. And what we have to do is show people a way of life that they can attain without crime, without, all the wrong stuff. And I don't know how we do that. I live my life, and I use my life as an example. I'm not getting involved in crime. I'm not effing and blinding. I don't swear. I don't lie to people. And if more people were like that, now some of that comes from the upbringing. A lot of it comes from my faith. I'm not saying my faith is better than anybody else's faith. I respect every faith, and I respect those of no faith. But we need to bring back some standards. The jails all over the world are just full of black people, full of white people. What is the point of that? In America, I can see what the point of that is, because they make money from the system. You keep a person in jail and you're making X thousand pounds every day that person's in jail. I can see why the numbers are. But that's not the case in England, but still, it's full of people. And it can't go on like that. It just can't. Whether or not the people exist to do what's required, to show that I'm too old now, it ain't gonna happen for me. If people want to ask me, if I've got ideas, I'll see what ideas I've got. But somehow we've got to bring the communities back. I'm not sure Brexit's gonna help. At the point when this is being recorded, I have no idea what's gonna happen with Brexit. I do know this, long before the vote took place, I was out at lunch with my boss, and I said to her, Brexit will lead to a problem in this country because referendums split the country. And we were either lucky or unlucky that it was 48 and 52%, but the 52% are behaving as if they're the only percentage that matter. Yes, you won, but there's still 48%, nearly half the country, who didn't agree with this. And if you're going to ask people, then in theory, you want to respect the result. But then we find out that the people who are running the Leave campaign lied and cheated and all of this and all of this. And what needs to happen is we need some rules about what happens when we have referendums or voting. Because, in the States, voter suppression is one of the biggest things. It's coming over here. Another thing is that the misuse of private information, massive in the States. They can target you on Facebook. You don't even know it's happening, but they know exactly what you're thinking because they look at all your Facebook posts. They know what you like, they don't know what you like, and they know what's going to touch your heartstrings. They send you a message that they want to get to you built around touching your heartstring, and suddenly you're voting for them. And you don't even know that that is happening. All of that kind of stuff has got to be sorted out because you know what? It's only going to get worse. So we've got 48% of the population now who don't know what's happening. Even the 52% don't know what's happening. And this is our future. We as a people, we as black people can only carry on our life as we do. We have some good MPs. David Lammy is an absolute genius, and I predict he's going to be Prime Minister one day. He's by far the best politician in Parliament at the moment. And you notice what I said then? The best politician. Not the best black politician, the best politician. And when you get to that state where people aren't looking at your color, you're either good or you're bad, then we will have arrived when people look at us and think, he's brilliant. And they don't even see the color. And we need more people like that. And one day when he's Prime Minister, maybe things will change. Whether Corbyn gets to be Prime Minister, I think Corbyn could do some good work. He's very left-wing. I don't see that as a problem. We've had right-wing politicians. Why was that not a problem? There are politicians in Parliament now who are saying they want to cut this, cut. The latest one I heard, and I was so mad. I interviewed somebody on Sunday Breakfast, and they said they want to cut back on the amount of food that people have for breakfast in hospital because they could save X million pounds a year. And I exploded, honestly. I said, do these people realize how stupid they sound when they say things like that? There are standards below which we cannot go. And we are heading way down below those standards at the moment. And people are dying because of it. All these cutbacks, social care, not enough money for social care. They now want to charge us, who've paid taxes all our life, want to charge us £300 more a year to pay for our social care. We're already paying for it. I don't know. Seriously, I don't know. Maybe David Lammy or maybe Corbyn, will make some changes and people will see. The biggest problem they have, people like Lammy and Corbyn and all of those, is the press will always be against them. And we've seen what the press is doing now. This is before Corbyn even gets anywhere near power. Slagging him off, fictitious stories, and that has got to stop. I think the European Union has been a great thing for this, the world, never mind the people in Europe. We have a great relationship with France and Germany and all these countries. And there was a time where we didn't have great relationships with those people. And we know what happened because of it. What happens if we come out and we go back to this isolationist stance? Then I don't know. I don't want to be depressive, but God will look after us in the end.